Hey guys, this is Eric with Mediavine, and this is our SEO like a CEO series, and today we're here to talk about long tail keywords. So really focusing in on the keywords we were talking about last week, but now on long tail keywords. So as mentioned last week, long tail keywords are the more specific or niche searches by users as opposed to the more generic kind of searches. All right, so why do we care about long tail? What is the long tail first off? It actually comes from statistics, the term, and the idea is when you have a distribution of things where there's a lot of a few number of things and then few of a lot of things, but the distribution ends up being, look at this chart here, you can see the head is much smaller, and as you go towards the back end, it looks like a long tail, right, of a creature. So it's a long tail, and that long tail ends up adding up to more than that kind of distribution at the beginning. And that's just a type of distribution, and that actually is where searches happen, which is why we call them long tail keywords and why we care about them so much. The term also applies to business. And again, think of something like Amazon, where they sell a few number of a lot of things, and that actually ends up making up a lot of Amazon sales and why they're so successful. And that also applies to a lot of other businesses. Look no further than Mediavine itself, right? We're all a bunch of what would be called long tail publishers in our industry, so we're not kind of the legacy or the big name brands, but all of us combined are more than 10 billion ad impressions a month, and combined we are actually end up being bigger than kind of those legacy brands. So you can see how long tail can add up to actually beat kind of that big head or the short tail of the distribution graph. Really exciting stuff that it actually applies to SEO, and here is why. So again, when it comes to SEO, that distribution is the same, and over 70% of searches are long tail and not kind of those generic keywords. So if you add up the long tail, it is bigger than the short tail. So that is actually where I'm going to encourage everyone to focus. There's more opportunity if you focus on the long tail. And it might not seem like it, right? If you're using a keyword planning tool, you may see a lot fewer searches for kind of the long tail and a lot more searches for kind of that generic. And you're probably going to want to go for the generic, but don't. Go for the long tail, because you're not just going after one long tail search term. You can go after many. And although we're going to encourage you to have kind of a focus keyword or only go after one key phrase per post, the chances are if you're writing a lot of content, you're going to rank for multiple different long tails in one post, and you'll have the ability to create multiple posts going after all these long tail. And if you add them together, you actually have a bigger search opportunity than going after the generics. But more importantly, they're also a lot less competitive. So they're a lot more winnable. So it's more likely you're actually going to get traffic as opposed to going after kind of those big terms, right? You can actually have a chance to rank on these. So why are they less competitive? Well, again, let's go back to our example from last week where we were talking about cheesecake. Let's say on the internet there's only 3 cheesecake recipes that were ever written. One about blueberries, one about strawberries, and one just a plain, generic, boring cheesecake. And now you want to go make your own cheesecake recipe and contribute it to the internet. What should you write about? So if you were to write a generic cheesecake recipe, you'd be up against 3 other people that you're competing against. But if you were to go after a blueberry, strawberry, or even a whole different type of fruit like, I don't know, blackberry, you would have either no competition or very little competition versus 3 times as much competition if you went after kind of the just big generic term that you might have wanted. So it's really important to realize that there's a lot less competition. And do these searches on the internet and you'll see the numbers are even bigger than the numbers I'm saying, right? So cheesecake recipe has like 200 million searches for it. Versus go look at like a blueberry or strawberry cheesecake recipe, you're going to see under 10 million. And while that still is a lot of competition, you don't want to go after 20 times as much competition or more. And sometimes long tail, you're going to see in the hundreds of thousands versus all of those millions. So realize it's even more competitive than just that because Google doesn't even show you all the results when it starts to get too big. So realize you might be talking hundreds of times more competition to go after a short tail or generic. And a lot of times long tail will have almost no competition. So focus on the long tail because it's more winnable. So there's more traffic and it's more winnable. And guess what? It's also more valuable traffic. This is what we talked a lot about with user intent last week, and it's so important here. If you think about when a user is searching for cheesecake, again, no idea what they're searching for. Are they looking for the nutrition content of cheesecake? Sure hope not, because it's terrifying. Are they looking for where to buy cheesecake? Are they looking where they can eat cheesecake right now? Or are they looking how they can make cheesecake or a recipe? You don't know. And the problem is, if a user is looking for the wrong thing and they end up on your site, that user is going to bounce or leave your site, providing no value to you as the publisher. What you want is to deliver the same result that that user was looking for, right? So they stay on your site, they're going to browse through your full content, they're going to be engaged. An engaged user interacts with your ads, making you more money. They're also more likely to sign up for your newsletter. They're more likely to become an engaged, returning user. No matter what your goals are, you want a user with the same user intent as the content you're providing. You want to provide the user with what they're looking for at the end of the day. And if you're not, they're not going to be happy with your result, which again, this comes down to generics are really tough to figure out what the user intent is. Cheesecake is just a small example. Look across any search query. If it's 1 word or 2 words, it's really tough to know what that user wants. And if you want to even get more specific with a kind of a long tail, go back to our example, low carb strawberry cheesecake recipe. And now if a user is on kind of like a keto or some sort of low carb diet and they arrive at your recipe, they're going to be super excited to find your recipe and to make your recipe. However, if they ended up on a regular cheesecake recipe and they're on a low carb diet, they'll probably be unhappy when they try to make it themselves, substituting out sugar or whatever you have to do, and their results don't turn out the way they wanted. So they're probably not going to come back to your site, right? So you want to give the user exactly what they're looking for, and therefore you can get a loyal, more valuable user to your site. All right, so long tail is less competitive. There's a lot more searches for it when added up together, and they're a lot more valuable. So clearly, they're going to be your strategy on what you're going to go after. Okay, perfect. So how do you do it? Well, as you probably have learned with our SEO series, it's more of a long tail strategy, right? We're going to break this up into multiple different posts and multiple different videos and multiple different kind of lessons for you to learn each of these things more piecemeal. It allows us to go into more detail. Take this post, for example, or this video. We were able to kind of go into more about the long tail, the origins of the long tail, why it makes more sense to go after. Because we don't just want to tell you, go after a long tail. You'd probably ignore that advice and you'd still go after kind of the big terms. But kind of honing in on all this and telling you why, hopefully you'll buy more into why a long tail is important. And that's kind of the entire strategy of this SEO series. So stick with us, and I promise you, you will learn how to do keyword research, how to do all your links, how to do on-page, off-page, and everything it takes to be able to win these long-tail keywords. The important part is knowing what you're focusing on, because if you don't have these kind of building blocks, you can't learn SEO. So thank you guys. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, and I will see you guys next week.